Heron versus Harang, and the Brewers will face the Pirates in Pittsburgh, 1:35 Eastern. Twins are trying to make a run in the wild card at 2:10 Eastern, face the White Sox. Tennis at the U.S. Open, men's final today, 4 Eastern. The number 1 seed Novak Djokovic and the number 2 seed Roger Federer. And from the NBA, Moses Malone passes away at the age of 60. I'm Pete Fox. This is NBC Sports Radio and the NBC Sports Radio app.
This is KCAA.
Consider this your invitation to sell. At buysellmakeoffer.com, you can sell as much as you want for the next 60 days without paying any fees whatsoever. Sound incredible? It is, and it's true. Buysellmakeoffer.com is the new exciting way to sell your stuff online. Make extra money right now. Sell your old car, furniture, video games, household items, clothes, even your home. Sell anything that's legal. Load up your stuff to sell right now at buysellmakeoffer.com. This is your official invitation to get on board to sell your stuff right now. Free for the next 60 days. And once you see how easy it is, you'll want to sign up for more because there are no item fees. That's right. Take this opportunity to move items from the other guys and sell it for free. You might even win a Samsung tablet, Amazon gift cards, and other cool prizes. BuySellMakeOffer.com is the future of online selling. You can use Skype to talk to your buyer or seller. Plus, you can use video to showcase your items. BuySellMakeOffer.com.
Kcaa.
We found the problem with your car.
And
Turns out the carburetor differential modulator is out.
what?
And while we were digging around in there, this thing fell off.
Stop. There's no automotive repair nightmares at Diego Martinez's 5-Star Automotive in San Bernardino. 5-Star Automotive, where you'll get a great experience, and home of the $15.99 oil change. That's right, just $15.99. They specialize in transmissions, brake repair, AC, and many other repairs, all with a lifetime warranty on parts and labor. Diego knows when your auto needs 5-star attention, it's never convenient. He offers a 12-month interest-free auto repair loan on major auto repairs with no money down. He'll even throw in free towing and a 10% discount for his neighbors in the 909 who work for the city and county of San Bernardino. Call 909-387-0770. That's 387-0770. Your neighbors at 909 West 2nd Street in San Bernardino.
As the owner of my business, I wear a lot of hats. I'm accounting, sales, and so much more. But I don't know marketing.
Let Dex Media be your marketing department. Our team can create a digital plan for you with everything from search to social. Contact Dex Media, that's DEX Media, to get found, get chosen, and get talked about.
Whoa, that's a job for cleanup, which would be me.
Call 844-230-3436 or visit dexmedia.com today.
Miss one of your favorite shows? Don't worry, we've got your radio DVR right here on KCAAradio.com. Log on and listen to any show you want, anytime you want, on KCAA 1050 AM.
How you doing? This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen. Hey, I'm the host. I'm not the microphone guy. I don't know how to push all the buttons. If I did, the world would be a much better place. I'd be pushing the right buttons all day long, lining things up, putting them in a precise place. Hit the button, make the thing happen the way it's supposed to. Well, we're going to do that, hopefully with a little wordology today. We are here to help solve some of the world's problems. How's that? One or two of them being, what happens when we complain? What happens when somebody says something that doesn't agree with what we think is the truth? We get a little upset. We think that's where we start calling people liars and things like that because they don't agree with us. Listen, how much will we learn if we don't talk to people who disagree with us? I think it's pretty important to find folks that are intellectually different from you, folks who don't represent the same view. That way you may be able to complete the view that you have. hold something up in clear sight. If I hold up my cell phone between myself and our friend in the engineering booth, he can see part of it and I can see part of it. But neither of us can see the whole thing. And that pretty much represents the issue of truth about most of the things that we argue about. Well, what are some of the things that we're arguing about? Well, if you come from Mars and you look at what's going on Earth here, you would have to determine that there is a privileged group and a not so privileged group. That there is a group of people who have pretty much whatever they want, though be it a extremely small group, there is a group that has pretty much whatever money can buy. And then there's the other group that is struggling, hustling for, and attempting to get themselves in a position to make tomorrow a relaxing reality that they can project and expect, or get out of the surprise, the element of surprise that most of our tomorrows really represent. The weatherman has gotten to be pretty accurate about what's going to happen tomorrow. The economic gurus don't seem to be so accurate. And the people that are projecting social issues, unfortunately, can be accurate because we can tell what happens when people don't have enough, when people are not prepared, when people are not regarded with respect. We move toward chaos, and ultimately that chaos becomes anarchy. So we've got some issues, some things that we need to deal with, and once again, we won't always agree with each other about those things. Some of us are complaining and upset because there's a group of people going around using a phrase, Black Lives Matter. And some people can't quite wrap their heads around the idea of how you treat people if, in fact, their lives matter. Some people are so concerned when other folks use that terminology, that Black Lives Matter, that they feel pressured to come up and remind us that, well, there's other lives that matter. Folks, I think we all realize that all lives matter, except in cases where we see an abundance of activity that presumes or insinuates that some lives don't matter. For instance, if you had a series, say a 200-year, 300-year-long series of mistreatment by one group of people, or to one group of people by a large group of people, over that period of time, you may determine that there's something wrong with those people that are being obviously mistreated, and it has to do with the way they present themselves. They're being mistreated because, well, they shouldn't be black. If they don't want people to mistreat them, why the hell are they coming here black? Well, it's not that quite that ridiculous. There are people who are going to disagree with my presentation there, and I welcome that, because through their disagreement I may get to learn something. But more importantly to me, if they address my disagreement, that means I get to address their disagreement of my disagreement, and maybe we'll both learn something. It just seems to me that as we look at the argument about Black Lives Matter and those people who say, that's interesting but not important, it kind of reminds me of the same people who say the same thing about affirmative action, that it's interesting but not important. The important thing about affirmative action is that you are using reverse racism by trying to give black people an advantage. Well, affirmative action wasn't just for black people, and if we go back and look at who benefited from it, we'll find that out. But the idea was that we're looking at a group of people who are being mistreated, who are not getting an opportunity to complete social activities at the level that will allow them success. We're stopping them at an early age. We have some barriers that are being placed in front of this group of people. One of them is a big image barrier. We spent several hundred years dirtying the name of dark-skinned people so that we, capital, could excuse the fact that we were enslaving them and working them without any pay, working them as though they were not people but more like animals. And I can't say that because PETA protects animals. You can't work animals the way that you worked slaves. So we had that big misunderstanding as to who and how and why, as the enslaved helped to build one of the greatest nations in the history of the planet. Now, as we have become more civilized, sophisticated, and understanding of the situation, having regular elections, creating unions, using the word equality, access to things of that sort, we have other levels of expectations for the formerly enslaved or the descendants of those formerly enslaved people. Some people disagree with it still. We still have a problem of getting proper education for that group of people. We still have a problem of over-identifying the young men and young women as potential troublemakers, probably because of the way we regard them. I heard a lady once say, I'll have to tell that story later, but when Jesse Jackson was first running for president, he came to the Inland Empire and was making a speech and a presentation to a very diverse group of people. And there was one lady, a white lady, who was cheering as Jesse spoke about every word. And during the question answer period, this lady spoke up and said that, Mr. Jackson, I really like many of the things that you say, and I'm really impressed with what I think you can do. But I can't help but wonder if I could really trust you to be president, because, I think you might try to get even. Mr. Jackson said, I'm sorry, try to get even for what? And she looked him square in the eye and said, Well, the point is, we do know. Why would a black man who became president of the United States try to get even? What would he be trying to get even for? Well, we have an idea that he could try to get even for the treatment that black people have received in general in our American experience. Some people think that we choose to remember and choose to want to get even. There's another group of people that think one of the weaknesses in the black experience is that black people do not want to remember, that they do not want to remember the slave period and the negative aspects of black life in America, and that if we did more to remember it and to chronologize it and set up our memory banks and our tributes to become a bit more like the Jewish people are about the Holocaust, that America and the rest of the world might give us more respect. I'm not sure which of those two things are the best way to go, but I do believe that arguing, presenting different viewpoints is very, very critical to our growth and our existence here in America. So, as such, I, Wallace Allen, will entertain those type of comments and conversation this morning as Mr. Leonard Evans, Mr. Jamal Lilly, and possibly you. Maybe you'll call in. Maybe you have an idea that you'd like to express with us. If that's the case, you could dial us at 888-909-1050. That's 888-909-1050. And Joe will determine whether, your comment is strong enough to get on the air. So you'd be very nice to Mr. Joe when you make that phone call. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen. We're going to take a very short break. And when we come back, we will start discussing the elements of argument, the elements of complaining, the likenesses of affirmative action and Black Lives Matter, and the ridiculousness of people wondering, what do you mean when you say Black Lives Matter? We'll be right back.
Just the basic facts. Can you show me where it hurts?
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
KCAA is your CNBC news affiliate. We're the station that gets down to business.
Once again, I can't explain. You will not understand. This is not how
This afternoon, we'll be coming in a couple of hours. Well, that's my prediction. Now, you want to argue with that? Well, those are things that we don't tend to argue about because those represent themselves. Well, I don't know. Mr. Anthony Garcia, our mood master, is suggesting that maybe this afternoon won't quite get here as early as I thought. He says it depends on your time zone, so I guess he's accurate about that. But sooner or later, we should be able to expect that this afternoon will get here. But how people are going to be treated during that time and after that time, that's our real concern. Mr. Leonard Evans, how are you today, my friend?
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Mr. Evans, I understand that
I'm here.
You have...
I'm alive and ready to go. I thought about what you were just talking about. Black Lives Matter would like to see an attitude adjustment. What I would say is a new white view of black positive potential.
Okay.
And interestingly, along that line, the folks get a chance to listen to Ben Carson. I'm not endorsing anybody here, but in terms of this idea of America better understanding black positive potential, he is playing a role unconsciously. Amazing interview this morning, but I won't go off into that. The idea here is that this is what everybody's looking for, but the passion, the emotion of Black Lives Matter is actually propelled, in my opinion, by something different. You talk about slavery and our history and how important it is to remember that, and I say yes, for one purpose only, to motivate us to excel now, to take advantage of everything, to remember that this wasn't available before, and doggone it, I better grab all I can. That's what Jewish people have taught their children, because they said, look, history says the world doesn't care about us. So you need to get to the top of your profession. You need to be the best that you can, because it's your only real guarantee of survival in a very uncertain world. We were teaching that message in the 50s when we were in coordination with Jewish groups in seeing the civil rights laws passed. And that same energy that existed back then because of the current injustices fueled an emotion and a passion. Well, that's not the same today. But people still want to do that. They want to play that role. They want to have that passion about something. And I suggest that energy needs to go into taking advantage of what's available now that wasn't available when we remember those times of slavery.
You know, we have such a technical advantage in terms of being able to see, remember the past, and actually to project into the future. And the educational aspects are so amazing that we definitely want to not miss the opportunity to educate our children. And
the only thing that is new is the history that you don't know now.
That's interesting.
Harry Truman said that.
Yeah, and once again, it has to do with tomorrow more than today. But we can make projections about tomorrow based on today, beyond the weather. Looking at the talent pool, looking at the need pool, as we approach the idea of scarcity in water, scarcity in resources, we definitely need to have the brightest minds on the planet working on solutions for how to convert some more resources into water, into energy, into things that will allow people to appreciate our differences, as opposed to use those differences as a reason to deny access to, as we deny access to a group of people, to energy and education. We're actually denying ourselves the fruits of their creativity. And somehow to get beyond the idea of just getting even or squaring up with people, we need to try to figure out ways to really push each other to our best level. It's kind of like watching great athletes. We can watch this is why I love track and field. You can lose the race and do your personal best of all time, and therefore be very satisfied participating in a race that to everyone else could look like, well, he lost. But no, he didn't lose.
I didn't race with myself. I didn't lose.
That's the idea, that we create a competition, an internal competition with ourselves about getting the best out of ourselves. But at the same time, we put that responsibility on our own individual selves.
Well, that's where good sportsmanship comes from.
Well, that's true. But then there's the sportsmanship for the whole arena. We can say the sportsmanship is on the field and how we approach and deal with each other. But the rules that have been set for the game are part of the sportsmanship. The atmosphere and the stadium in which we play the game is part of the sportsmanship. We can't have one team on one side with good, cool, air-conditioned locker rooms and all of their microphones and speakers work well, and then another team over on the other side of the field where they have no air conditioning. Matter of fact, they have no dressing room, and their communication system doesn't work. So that doesn't just rob that team of being able to do its best. It robs the team that they're playing of being presented against someone who's pushing them to do their best. And then, of course, those of us who are watching an event that is nowhere near its best because of the hog-tying or the mistreatment of one of the teams that are playing.
What you're saying here is that there's no honor with victory over an unarmed opponent. You want a victory you can be proud of. If you go back and look at ancient history, these guys always talk about how fierce this guy and strong this guy was that they just beat in a battle. That's what made it significant. And facing the bigger challenges personally in our own life can yield a satisfaction that is matched by nothing else. People killing other people think they're responsible for the circumstances that the killer is in. The killer doesn't realize that they could do more to change their life by working on themselves. That's an extreme example, but it goes to the root of not taking responsibility. And when we do, everything changes. And as a society, that's what we're talking about here. So you want that event to be a real contest. And what we're really talking about, Wallace, who's allowed on the field in the first place?
Well, now
that was the big battle that we couldn't even
play.
We weren't
let's
allowed
stay
to
there
play.
just for a moment and go look again on some track and field events and realize that when everyone who is in the race decides that they would like to break a record, that they would all like to be pushed and pressed to the point of doing better than they've ever done before. They may bring in what they'll call a rabbit. That's someone who does not intend to finish the race. They may finish the race, but their point and purpose in the race is to set a pace that challenges everyone's best. And and everybody's in on the deal. They realize that they're working against each other, but they are working for each other.
As a team. Exactly.
If we were to regard a farmer who is, he and his family, who's looking at the horizon and they see a rainstorm coming, and they realize that they are right in the middle of their potato harvesting season. And their goal now is to get out and pick as many of these potatoes as possible before the rains come. They may set up a competition to see who can pick the most potatoes. But the person who picks the most potatoes isn't going to eat them all or claim them all. That's to complete the harvest for the group. And we want everybody to do their best, even though it may seem like a competition. The competition isn't to defeat someone. The competition is to drag along those who cannot go as fast as those who are in the lead. We don't want to lose anybody. We're not here to beat down and lose people. We're simply here to inspire and push people to do their best so that the rest of us, okay, now you're in the family, right? And the first ones to the dinner table aren't the only ones to eat. We have to deal with those and for those people who are not as sharp, who are not as quick, who are not as fast, but who are just as.
But they contribute other things.
Well, they contribute other things, and if they get to the point where they are no longer contributing, but they have contributed, you still want to take care of them.
That's right.
Okay, I mean, my grandmother, when she passed, she could not, and it took my mother to tell me, she could not cook as good as she could when she were younger. My mother was telling me, she said, son, your love for grandmother's cooking and your love for grandmother is what makes you think that she's cooking that chicken so good. You're remembering the days of the great chicken more than you are experiencing the days of the great chicken. And, she was she was absolutely.
Well, what you're saying here is that we all, at one time, were helpless and needed help in our lives.
Or are going to be. If you were not that way, you are going to be that way.
As a child, as a baby, we were dependent on others. So perhaps time to help somebody else out. That follows. That makes sense.
That's the idea. And I think that if we don't do those things, that means we are actively doing something else. And that's where the argument comes in. That's where it looks like we're holding each other down. That's where it looks like we're being haters instead of being people who are who
lovers, right.
Facilitate.
And you get something out of helping other people that you don't get from anything else. Folks they were depressed, all this kind of stuff. They decided to get involved in helping other people. It did more for them than the people they helped, and it truly helped the people that they helped.
Well, one of the things that's kind of got me moving this today, Leonard, is I'm looking at. I could not help but see that the ex-tennis player, star tennis player, Mr. James Blake, in New York, in a hotel, was attacked by a policeman, thrown to the ground and handcuffed. He had been misidentified by a witness to be part of some type of credit card scheme. You could see him being pointed out on this video, and the policeman going over to an undercover policeman, by the way, going over to him and throwing him to the ground. Now, I don't know if you are an MMA observer, but there are some guys on the MMA, that's the mixed martial arts group, that if I were a policeman, I would not want to go and accidentally grab them. So for my own personal safety, I don't think even as an undercover cop, you're going to be able to get me to just go grab somebody and throw them down,
That is unusual.
It's unusual from the standpoint of the policeman's desired security. And just think, how many times you've been standing, maybe appearing to be idle, not doing anything, just standing, that you could have been, somebody could come in and just throw you to the ground and handcuff you.
Subject to the same treatment, right?
First of all, I don't think they would do that to everybody, and I don't think every policeman is of the attitude to do that. My concern is, what do we do with the ones that we find who are of that attitude and of that ilk? After we find out, what do we do with them? This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen, enjoying my conversation with you and, of course, my good friend Leonard Evans. Hoping you're enjoying it as much as I am and getting as much and possibly more out of it than I am. Stick around. We'll be right back and continue this conversation and continue our look at what is it that aggravates people so much when someone lets them know that they've got a little hanging in their nose. You should be happy that someone told you, wipe it off, straighten yourself up, and move forward. Don't get mad at me because I tried to help you out. Maybe you didn't think it was help. Maybe I should have left you walking like that. Then I could have been embarrassed later on. Anyway, this is Empire Talks Back. We'll be right back after this short break.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
You're listening to KCAA, your good neighbor along the way.
That's our friend Jimi Hendrix. He's explaining
your question as you left.
Yes.
You point out something to someone, made me think, do you ask, did someone die? And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, why is your zipper at half-mast? Do you want to do that? Do you want to ask them if they want your help? That's really what it comes down to. And some people, you find out that they really don't want a solution for the problem. They want attention while they've got the problem. So if you solve the problem, that is the last thing they want.
That's true.
So I would advise those that are inclined to point out something to determine whether or not the person is interested in a suggestion first.
Well, you need an airport to land an airplane. And I say that simply because if you are out delivering information to people who don't want it, it's like trying to land your plane on the freeway. There's no runway. Yeah, there's no runway. There's no desire to. You're in the way as you try to do that. So, we have to. I guess you have to have someone ask a question before you can give an answer. But sometimes we need to provoke those kinds of things. If indeed, Mr. Evans, that we realize that getting in school and being productive in school is important, not just for the student, but for society around that student, then we would want to do something to get everybody as educated as possible, especially those who want more education. Now, we realize that there are some schools that are apparently better than others. It's hard to say how and why, but let me ask you this. If we saw someone running who had a 50-pound weight that they were dragging behind them, and they were racing against a person who had a 10-pound weight dragging behind them, we would generally expect that the person with the 10-pound weight would succeed quicker than the person with the 50-pound weight.
That would be the usual
in general. Regardless of which of these people were to win a race, we would be able to look at them both and say that they had some obstacles, they had some impediments that needed to be dealt with as we assess, their right to get more educated or their desire to get more educated or our ability to depend on them to try to do their best. Would we need to pick one of these people more than the other? Is it necessary to throw one of them away because we absorb the other? That's this winner take all. The winner take all concept in competition. The competition that creates a loser as much as it creates a winner, and many times it creates more losers than it does winners. I'm not saying to soften up the competition, But I am trying to say that just because Mr. Usain Bolt ran a 9.51 doesn't mean I want to throw away the guy who came in second who ran a 9.52. Okay, the distance between the winner and the loser is much too close for us to really assume. And if we're dealing with education, and I'm now in the echo of affirmative action. I'm talking about the fact that we have some people in the United States who get a much slower start, who carry a much heavier burden, a much longer distance through the race.
That's true.
Who are compared sometimes with people who had no burden, who were really running a much shorter distance to the finish line, as they both apply to college. We have, I mean, if you want to go to the University of California and you want to attend Berkeley or UCLA or I think Irvine, you have to be a straight A student with honors classes that you also got straight A's in. Now,
extracurricular activity.
If we only had people like that, you know, and I'm sure that those people are really, really critical to our development. We're missing people who had challenges, who fought challenges to get where they were, not who were able to simply take advantage of opportunity, but people who fought against challenges in order to get to the place where the opportunity was. Hey, America, we're missing those people.
We're
do not
missing
allow
opportunities. Using that system, we're bypassing talented people. Guy told a story yesterday about machine shop. The guy came in, took some classes, didn't do that well, but later wound up in industry and was the head of this entire department. And they had classed him as just, not having it.
Yeah.
But he had a different approach to things that allowed him to see concepts about what was going on that the people trying to teach him didn't even understand. And if we use this hard rule to categorize everybody, we often miss the benefits that they truly have to offer. I think that's what you're getting at here.
I'm trying to say it a million times, a million different ways, on my way to saying it 100 million times, 100 million different ways, because apparently each individual needs to hear it in a way that makes sense to that individual. Because we are constantly arguing and fighting over things that other people tell us are important, as opposed to realizing or looking for the things that are important for ourselves, and I understand there's so much information out here. How could you possibly research everything that comes to you? There is nothing common about common sense.
The interesting and the important.
But to follow the cycle of argument for the sake of argument, I'm not sure that's good. But to argue for the sake of seeking new information, now
there you go.
That's fine. Where would the world of music be without Charlie Parker, Jimi Hendrix, people who dare to be different with their instrument, without the music with the mood master? Where would we be? Those things are the things that we don't pay attention to. Don't necessarily mean that those things are not important. And I guess that's
Paganini in the 1700s. They wanted to put him in jail. His music's effect on women at a concert when he played the violin was dramatic.
Well, I don't want my wife hearing that stuff. She'd want to go home with that guy.
Well, he broke new ground. Many of these people that set the stage, it took us from having like just one instrument as part of a nomadic group that didn't have the time to develop other things, individuals, all the way from Mozart to Charlie Parker and many others, Hendrix, and people today, the rappers even.
Right.
This is part of the evolution of music, and everything around us is going through this same transition. So that many jobs that are going to be here in the future don't even exist yet. But if you can run a computer, you can probably run a machine. So I got to say it again.
If you can't operate a computer, chances are you're not going to be able to operate some of these new machines, including
But you
your
can learn to
automobile.
run a computer for $140. I submit, who doesn't have that?
Well,
Check
now
your community college.
let's go back to that question, Mr. Evans. It's only $140, and the next question was, who doesn't have that? Boy, that's a sad answer. The answer to that question should make us sad, because there are probably plenty of people who do not have that. And then again, as we note, one of the things that most homeless people have is indeed that computer. Well, it's a telephone, but it's important. And yeah, I see now signs on the corners where people are getting or able to access a free telephone. They call them government phones. Free telephone. But I'm sure all of their newfangled tracking devices necessary. But if you can't pay for your phone, then whoever pays for it for you probably has the right to track who you're calling and what you're saying to them. So, I mean, as a parent, a parent that pays for their child's phone has that right. And probably if you're getting a government phone, they want you to be able to stay in touch in an emergency and not do a whole lot of other things. So that makes sense to me. I'm not opposed to that. Mr. Jamal Lilly has joined us. I hope it's because we said something that made him just have to come in. Maybe we got under his skin. Mr. Evans, we did it. We did it. We did it. We got under somebody's skin this morning, and we don't want Mr. Lilly.
Well, in that case, I have to stick in one more.
No. Let's let Mr. Lilly.
Let him say it.
Okay, go ahead. Mr. Lilly said he said let you go on because you may be apologizing.
Thank you. He cited 3 different examples of people he'd met who he had listened to because he's a desk, and how intelligent and how much they knew about their particular field and how much he learned from them. He said, this showed me that we have so much talent right here, so many resources we can use right now that we can make a difference. So he emphasized that point. That's all.
Okay, now who was that?
That was Dr. Carson.
Oh, Dr. Carson. Okay, you're back on his interview.
Again, I'm not endorsing him. I just found it fascinating how he presented this, his willingness to ask him why he was so humble. And he said, well, I listened. You have to realize you can't know everything, that other people may be smarter than you. And he cited these 3 examples of how much he'd learned from these people and what it meant to America going forward, that we have a lot of very valuable resources that we should be using right now.
We should be using them, and Donald Trump appreciated him until I think Ben asked him to pray. But anyway, Mr. Lilly,
yes,
we got under your skin this morning, and would you care to share that with us?
Okay, first thing I want to say.
Can you hear him? Is he loud enough?
My mic on? Is my mic on good? All right. First thing is, I noticed that you mentioned something, Wallace, that isn't quite right. You talked about, well, if you have a longer race to run to get to the admissions in these colleges and universities that are considered prestigious and so on and so forth, you probably, are at some sort of disadvantage. Hold that thought for a second. I'm going to add another piece. You also said, well, you got to get straight A's and honors classes and all this
in order
to
qualify for UCLA right now.
Extracurricular activity.
What about legacy admissions? And then
you mean the people that are not?
I'm talking about wealthy affirmative action, or affirmative action for the rich kids that
see how important it is to talk to people who don't necessarily agree with you. Now, I had forgotten about those people, and Jamal has.
16%, a full 16%,
because he's told me about this before, as I've casually cast these numbers out.
A full 16% of the attendees at what the experts considered to be the top 20 universities are not qualified to be there by the admission standards.
They are there because they knew
because of their parents' pedigree.
This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen, being brought to the truth by our friend Jamal Lilly, and you are the beneficiary.
But I have a larger point. But
he's got a larger point. We're going to take a very short break, and we're going to come back, and we are going to continue to discuss this issue of understanding and misunderstanding. Why is it that we're not a stronger America than we are now? We've got so much talent that we've been able to stick some of it in the garbage can and just, throw it away. Why aren't we doing better? We'll be right back and discuss that.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
For more local radio every day, tune into KCAA Loma Linda.
This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen, on the case for truth, justice, with the right information to help improve the situation. And if you can listen to old folk while you're young,
as we were,
you'll be very different, because no one that I know has satisfactorily listened to older people enough that when they got old that they didn't say, well, I wish I had listened to Pop a little bit
think
better.
You're doing that, you're not doing it. We're not doing it well enough.
There's more that can be learned by listening to people who are not standing in the same place you are, looking exactly where you are, feeling the same thing you are. Differences are very, very, very important.
Which is what we're talking about.
Yes.
You're talking about differences in the context of generations. It makes a whole lot of sense, and a lot of people can see it because the people that have come here before have a lot of experience. They can tell you blah blah blah. But what you don't see a lot of times is people understanding that a person who comes from a cultural reality that might not be considered as valuable or might not be considered as much of a resource that can get you to a desirable goal,
or may not be trending,
et cetera, et cetera.
Not the fashion for the moment.
So on and so forth. You don't necessarily hear people or see people acknowledging that this idea of diversity, even when it includes the person who comes from the reality that you don't want to be in, is actually in some ways more valuable.
Yes.
Than the person that can show you how they got to a desirable result. And the idea of knowing what not to do, in my book, a lot of times is so much more valuable than the idea of knowing what to do. Because if I am in a position to not repeat mistakes, or if I'm in a position to look at a circumstance and say, that looks bad right now, but I see this other example of where a similarly bad situation turned around, it gives me vision. And vision is what you have to have in order to advance any kind of society. And we lack vision. And so what happens? I've got a nephew now who's in the UC system.
Okay.
Who did all what you're talking about.
He got all
went
of his...
to all the stuff, the summer stuff and all the special
classes.
mentor situations and community service and got himself
begging for money.
Begging for money, absolutely, and got himself into UCLA. He has now dropped out. Now, this is a brilliant young man.
Dropped out because?
He dropped out because he got there and there was no one like him.
No culture for him to lean on.
It was nothing that he felt like he could relate to. And that is not a crutch or an excuse. It's just the real situation. Right. So he tried to attach himself to the available cultural realities that were there in terms of, studying and, a subgroup of students that could support him culturally and feeling like he
There
had
was
a sense of belonging.
On UCLA's football team who did something unusual last week, 2 weeks ago. He took somebody's cell phone, but before he did that, the night before, he posted on his Facebook something about a fear of the devil and would somebody please help me. The young man is away from home on a college campus, brought there to play football, not really knowing anybody, leaning on no one but the coach. Our community should be...
Wasn't there.
No. There's no... If the young man's grandmother raised him up to go to church, like many grandmothers do, and he's away at school, and nobody's there to remind him to go to church or show him where church is or to take him to church, he may, after a couple of weeks of that, feel that indeed the devil is coming to get him, especially if there's a cutie pie down the hall who
that likes
feel
football
like,
players.
Making him feel like a man and he ain't quite there yet. And all kind of things. Culture is very important. As we're looking at UC Berkeley right now, they are attempting to, they've come up with another program to go out and bring more African American students on campus for the purpose, they say, of making the ones that are there more comfortable, because there is no real black experience available on Berkeley's campus.
Wallace, I am an alumnus of the esteemed University of California.
And it seems like they need you to come back and have some sensitivity classes.
Let me tell you, we had the same struggle that the generation before us had when I was there. I was there in the late 80s, early 90s. To make a long story short, our big thing at that time was they were trying to get affirmative action, equal opportunity, all that. Was Ward Connerly and all these type people were hot at the time, and so the whole thing at our
Ward Connerly was the black man who determined that we black people do not need any special advantage to go to the colleges, despite the fact that there are privileged people who get to go even if they're D and EF students.
And one of them was named Ward Connerly.
Now one of the psychological practices that we see occurring throughout the planet is that when people who are not really sure of their own accomplishment and ability to do something, when they get through the door, instead of wanting to explore the room, their first goal
shut that door
is to close the door
so
nobody else comes in.
So there was a symbol of the disaffection of the black and brown students' experience on the campus. It was called the T buildings. All right. Make a long story short, the T buildings were these military barracks that they built during World War II that were so dilapidated that you could see the sun through the roof and through the wall slats. This is where they put all of the affirmative action things, all of the tutoring facilities.
For a classroom?
Yes, for the black students to go to.
Okay, so you guys were upset about the fact that you guys were the only ones able to get fresh air all day long.
and cold air in the winter and hot air in the summer.
Something to keep
and
you
rain
in
the
with
rainy
the environment
season.
so that you never had a mistake things were getting easy for you just because you were at Berkeley.
Not quite.
They were doing this so that you could maintain the edge that came along with being students of need and in need and challenging this system.
No,
they didn't. They didn't do that. Wasn't.
That's not what was happening. What was happening is they kept saying to us,
"We're going to make it better.
We're getting ready. Exactly. We're getting ready.
We're getting ready to raise
put you in a real building
so we can
tear down these not fix them, tear them down." And put you in a real building where you're going to have facilities
because
that are
you guys represent such great potential for America.
Termites,
everybody's going to be so ashamed
roaches,
of how we're treating you
rats,
that they're going to demand that we provide you with better facilities so that we can be sure that we get the best out of you.
Ha! Don't you know? The whole time I was there, those T buildings remained our primary academic home. And don't you know that as of today,
they're still there.
Do I need to say it? So,
listen, this, folks, is why, to me, I think that we are really blowing it when we do not take, an African American, like Ben Carson. Ben Carson, to be able to stand there all calm and cool and collected and pretend that everything in his history was,
come on, man.
Okay?
But see, the thing you're saying is UC Berkeley's getting ready to come up with this program. They're getting ready to do this, that,
They're getting
and the
ready to beat some people up for some more money in the name of black people.
Correct.
To say they're going to do something to help black people.
Correct.
And probably, like you say, 10 years from now, someone will be able to sit at the same desk and say,
we tried.
Yeah.
We tried, but it couldn't work. It didn't work because of these reasons.
And
the
we'll
number
go back
one
and we'll say, if you guys raised $100 million and kept 20% for your admin on your unsuccessful program, that means you guys made $20 million while you wasted $80 million pretending that you were going to help somebody.
We call it, and we called it then, we still call it now, poverty pimps, man.
Poverty pimping.
The bottom line is what we have to do is we have to be in a situation where, and I'm not going to get too graphic, where the subject of the pimping is allowed a seat at the table or takes a seat at the table to determine what happens with the funds, or exposes at least what's happening with the funds. It remains diligent enough as it's being done, and don't relax and say, okay, here's the program, we accomplished the goal. No, wait and see what happens with the money and report to the community what is happening as it's happening.
You're suggesting that
diligence.
You're suggesting that real pimps have more exchange with their prostitute workers about the future than these fake pimps at the school who are pretending that they want to help.
Otherwise, the prostitute wouldn't remain a prostitute, or wouldn't even remain in a position to be subject to prostitution.
Or would at least go find another.
Or would go to a different pimp. Exactly. Now, I know that's making people uncomfortable, but that's how I feel when my next of kin, who's in the next generation, is now at a UC situation that's no better than the situation I was in. And I know that I was in a vastly better situation than my parents, and the situation hasn't improved. It's gone backwards.
But here's a true statement. If your nephew does as well as you've done and contributes half of what you've contributed to society, he will have done a good job. Now that's
his expectation
the sugar,
level.
That's the sugar with the vinegar.
It's about expectations too, though, Wallace. I mean, these kids grow up with a sense of entitlement now because of the internet, this instant gratification. I know we got to
get out.
I know we got to go, but what I'm saying is, bottom line, when the kids have that sense and they compare it or juxtapose it against the same kid that comes from a different reality, has the same sense, and they're not getting the same result, it's discouraging and it's hard to overcome.
Don't let your discouragement stop you from picking up that $100 bill.
Thank you.
Okay? All right, this is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen on the case for truth and justice with the right information to help improve the situation. Mr. Evans, thank you for your contributions. Mr. Lilly, I'm glad we got under your skin so that you could come in here and straighten us out. Everybody at UCLA didn't earn their way.
No, none of these schools.
Right. So, Joe, thank you very much for a great opportunity to speak on your microphones this morning. I do appreciate you and
always.
Kcaa.
He's looking at us.
God bless you. See you next week under two circumstances. One, the good Lord's willing. Two, if the creek don't rise. See you, Moon Master.
To every word I say, every word I say.
You're on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
Johnny Manziel has the Browns' first touchdown. I'm Pete Fox. When Josh McCown left with a head injury, Johnny Manziel ended the game. He throws a touchdown pass to Travis Benjamin. That game tied at 7, 9:41 to go in the second. Jets with the ball. Chiefs and Texans are playing in Houston. KC up in that one 7.